360.
Hello there.
I'm Robert Scoble, and we're in Los Angeles.
With Susie Borders of BadVR.
Yay! We're here in the headquarters of BadVR.
The very messy, full of gear. Apologies for the 3D printer behind you.
No problem.
All of the gear around.
Hey, this is why I like 360, because people get to see what a real startup looks like.
That's right. You're down and dirty in the mess with us.
No faking it here, right?
Exactly.
And,
we have Jad over here with his. I don't even know if he can see us.
I can see through.
Oh, that has the bathroom.
I
Nice.
can see
Nice.
Yay.
Great.
And who's that?
This is Jad, and this is Matt.
Matt.
Yes.
Hey. And introduce who they all are.
So
I write code.
You write code, all right, in the headset.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
It doesn't work as well.
And he also helps with the hardware, the special controller that we have.
Great.
Yeah. Data
Cool.
control.
Yay.
Yeah. And then we have Matt, who's helping us with sales.
Awesome.
I do everything that nobody else wants to do.
Excellent. All the grunge work.
And also the hardware. So
Very cool.
Did you come up with the design for the stickers, I think?
Oh yeah, I did the stickers.
You did the
Awesome.
stickers, yeah.
I got to take some minutes. Of course, that's the real goal is get stickers.
Everyone wants stickers.
Everyone wants new stickers, right, for their headsets. Oculus Quest is coming.
Yes.
So for people who don't know what BadVR is, what are you all working on here? Because I know what you're working on, but people inside this little box called a 360 camera probably want to know who you are and what you do.
Sure. So for the people inside the black box, we do immersive data visualization. So we take really large, complex data sets and put them into virtual and augmented reality, helping people find insights faster.
So when you showed it to me at the Game Developers Conference, you showed me a Magic Leap, which is one of these headsets over here, and you showed me a factory floor with all sorts of data streaming off the factory floor.
Right.
So when I first heard about data visualization, I was like, my mind goes to something like Excel, and thinking of a chart or something.
Exactly.
What you're building is not charts and it's not Excel. It's actually helping you visualize your business in 3D on the real world. It's really pretty crazy.
Thank you. We really focus on giving people a shared context for their data, and then also helping them find insights in a way that is easy and intuitive for everybody. So you don't have to be like a data visualization expert. You don't have to code in Python, and you don't have to really understand complex charts. Like, our whole goal is to democratize insight. So we want to make data accessible using AR and VR, and the way to do that, in our opinion, is not through multidimensional charts.
So data visualization. Why did you get into the VR industry? What drew you into this industry, and why VR? Right?
Yeah. So when I was little, I was born in California, but when I was like a year and a half old, my parents moved me to the Midwest. My dad graduated from medical school, and they moved me to Kansas City. So, long story short, and no offense to Kansas City, I hated it there, and I didn't have any friends. So I would obsessively watch Star Trek: The Next Generation, and because I'm old, I would tape it on VHS tapes. So I would watch the same VHS tapes over and over and over again, and part of what I loved about The Next Generation, Star Trek, is that they had a holodeck. So you could go into a room and go anywhere in the world. And so I would read the Encyclopedia Britannica before there was Google, and find all of these places that I really wanted to go, and because I didn't want to be in Kansas City. It was like this vision of being able to build a virtual world and go anywhere other than where I was, and the infinite potential of that. So that's what drew me into the concept of VR, AR, and then of course like other sci-fi movies, like Iron Man or Mission Impossible type stuff was always a draw as well. Wanting to make that real, it's like, who wouldn't want to, in my opinion.
Very cool.
Thank you.
Tell me about how you guys started this business, and where you got from that idea of you wanted to live in a holodeck to actually creating a business.
So prior to doing this, I worked for two companies. One of them is called Remind, that did predictive, data visualization, predictive analytics for the residential real estate industry. I worked with Jad at that business, which is how we met. And so I was leading the design of that product, and part of that entailed getting together 200 different nationwide data sets onto a 2D map, and then making that data understandable and usable for a non-technical person, aka an average real estate agent. So I did a lot of research into who is an average real estate agent and the different personas that would then be using this product. And the one that was most prevalent was, like a 52-year-old, woman who's, maybe has an iPhone and she might have a computer, but, very non-technical. So there were a lot of challenges around making that data accessible. And part of the challenge was getting all of it together in one single view and making it contextually usable to them. So I had this idea that, instead of looking down on this sort of map, if we could make it three-dimensional and sort of look at it from the side, or at least in 3D on a flat screen, I could get across more data to the end user, and I could make it easier for them to understand what that data was telling them. But this was really early in the, it's like 2015, 2016, so the hardware for VR wasn't quite ready yet. So so I didn't think that, I had this idea of like data, AR, VR, together to visualize it, make it accessible. It was just sort of a kernel of an idea, and it didn't come to fruition. We did some sort of exploration, but just didn't feel that the market was ready. So then I ended up going to a company called Prepsy, which did essentially the same thing that Remind did, but for the commercial real estate industry. Sort of spent some more time there, again, being the director of UX and leading their product design. Same sort of thing, did all these 2D analytics, and then once I sort of saw the industry mature more, and I started seeing VR headsets that were ready for an actual deployment. Like, they're not going to fail. They're not going to make someone sick. They are untethered. I can actually deliver a product on this piece of hardware. I was like, okay, I think now is the time for this idea to become real. Yeah. So I put in my resignation.
Yeah,
I did it.
That's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
2019, we're about to get Oculus Quest, and I think that's a really big product for the industry because of that. Because it's $400, because it's untethered, because it doesn't need a PC, doesn't need a room, right? Exactly. All of these things have held a lot of people from buying VR and taking it seriously, and I think that's going to open up new markets and prepare the market for what's coming next. Because I don't think, 5 years from now, I don't think we're wearing VR.
No, I agree with that 100%.
All right, what do you think in 5 years we're wearing? And then are you going to have to change the name from BadVR to Bad AR, Bad XR, Bad Spatial Computing?
Bad SC?
Yeah, it doesn't quite roll off the tongue the way
it doesn't. It doesn't. You bring up two good points about the name, number one, and number two, where I think the hardware is going. So I think that in 5 years' time, there is going to be no distinction between AR, VR, MR, XR. I think it's all just going to end up being one lightweight device on your head that has different modes. You can have a VR mode, you can have an AR mode, you can have, whether you see the environment or you don't is going to be an option that you control that's not dependent upon the hardware that's on your
Or the designer's controlling, right?
Exactly.
I could see having a virtual door here in your office, and you go in the door, and now you're in VR, right?
Or in Narnia.
You're in your holodeck you were dreaming of as a kid, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And then I can use voice controls to.
In fact, that's why I'm filming on 360 cameras now. People, you can't really understand this 360 camera until you get into VR.
Right. And
you can look around, and you can actually act like you're a third person here. In fact, I sort of am trying to keep you off to the side.
Yeah.
So, I'm starting to have to think about this camera differently than I used to think about a camera before.
Yes.
Because somebody is going to wear a VR headset in this little box.
Yes.
And look around, look at him, and look at him. so don't pick your nose, because you
behave yourself.
Yeah, no bad VR over here. But where I'm going with this is cameras are changing.
Yes.
Our ability to tell stories is changing. That's why I came to LA this week with my kids to see, Intel Studio and see USC and see you guys understand visualization a little bit differently and where this industry is going. Anyway, so keep telling me where do you think this industry is going?
Right. So I think that it's all going to be a lightweight piece of hardware that goes in your face that looks like glasses, and they think it's going to give you the ability to have AR and VR in one single device, and I also think that it's going to augment sort of everyday life. So it won't just be in the way that people think of like, oh, VR or AR. It's just going to be, oh, this is my interface, or whatever the word ends up being for that. So, you know, if you think about like how when mobile phones came out and you had the internet and all of that, like people thought like, oh, it's an add-on to a phone device. But now when we think of a phone, just like obviously that the phone's connected to the internet. But like back when we first had mobile phones, that wasn't a given, and that was not something that people took for granted. But I think that that's how it will be for these glasses. It's just like, oh, it's the glasses that augments my world, but it won't be like, oh, here are glasses with AR and VR capabilities. It'll just sort of be assumed. And I think that we'll have certain wearables that tie into that whole ecosystem, gathering data about ourselves, our environment, and that's why I think that data really is the killer app for immersive technologies, because all of the interfaces and all of the displays really are driven by data, and the way that you present that to the end user in these immersive environments is something that we really is a new frontier that we really have to like rethink what that is. Like going back to what you said when you thought data visualization, I think charts. But when you have an immersive environment, that's really not the best way to display it, especially when that data is contextualized to you, like a Fitbit or something, or data about your environment, and it's giving you an augmented sort of true version of augmented reality. It's overlaying all of this data. It can't be overlaid in charts. Like that's just not going to work.
No, here's an example that we might talk about. Retail store, right?
Yep.
Retail store, I want to know dwell times.
Yes.
That's data, business data.
Exactly.
How long does somebody dwell in front of the Oreo cookies, right?
A long time.
A long time, right? Versus the milk, versus the Cheerios, versus the soups, versus all the other places. And do you want to see that in an Excel spreadsheet? No. You want to see it as data, like a heat map on top of the store. If we were designing a new store, we would walk around an existing store with a heat map of the dwell times. So we would know where people are actually stopping and hanging out a bit. And so we would know, that's where we charge Anheuser-Busch more money for their beer display.
Like, we know people hang out exactly right here.
Yeah.
So this real estate costs more than that real estate.
Absolutely.
And you can also overlay it with traffic patterns from different days and times.
Truth
and all of
is,
that
they're
stuff.
way more sophisticated than that. They actually look at what 3 or 15 things did you look at before you got to the beer?
There's the pattern. Yes. Cookies, peanuts, margarita mix.
Yeah, what got you to the beer?
Alka-Seltzer for the next morning. No, that's the data in an environment and contextualize, I think is that's the killer app for VR, AR, all of this, whatever it ends up being in 5 years from now, because that's what really drives the use and the value of that is like, hey, I can augment myself and give myself essentially superpowers, whether that's x-ray vision into the, signal data within a room, or whether that's x-ray vision into the lingering time in front of the beer stand. It really depends on your industry and what matters most to you, but all of it is best not done in an Excel or into a chart.
Yeah. It's a pretty crazy world coming at us. How are you guys funded? You can tell me a little bit about how you're building this company, and probably you're going to need more as you get bigger, as the industry gets more interesting.
Definitely. This it also goes back to your question about the name, which I definitely want to address. So right now we're funded primarily friends and family, and we received a grant from Magic Leap through their independent creator program. So that was really wonderful and helped us out a great deal. We've also applied for and have been shortlisted for 2 SBIR grants through the government. Okay. So that's another funding strategy that we've been pursuing. But right now it's primarily angels, friends and family. We are talking to VCs, and we do plan in our next round to really embrace that and go in that direction, because we will need to raise more capital, to bring this whole product to market. Right now we're doing pilots, and that's been very helpful in terms of building, getting feedback from users and figuring out exactly what each of our data environments needs to be. And obviously it brings us money in, and that's fantastic too, which is another way that we've been funded, is the money that we're actually making from people using our product, which is always a good thing. But yeah, so that's sort of our overall strategy, and speaking to the name and how that relates to VC.
Yeah, where does BadVR come from?
So it's funny, when we go in and pitch, angels and friends and family, people that I've worked with before who believe in me as an entrepreneur, never ever have problems with the name. They all love the name. They think it's fantastic. They're like, well, I think it has to do because they know me, right? And so they're like, it's an extension of Susie, and it just really much fits my whole vibe. But when we go and pitch VCs, the name is like, well, I don't really know about that, and what is it bad, and do you think people will be bad or think that it's a bad technology? And this is funny to me because then the customer side of it, we put up a booth, we went to TechCrunch Disrupt, we did some Mobile World Congress. Every single person that came, I love the name. Yeah. All of the people that are paying us money, customers, and these are large multinational corporations. It's not like mom and pop stores on the corner. Yeah. They all love the name. They don't have a problem with it internally. It's not. So I think it is. There's a
it's a funny name. It makes you go, what is this company?
Exactly. That's good though. The interest.
Yeah, it has some personality to it right away, right?
Exactly.
Because obviously you're in business, so you're doing something right? It's not all bad, right?
It's so bad.
At a startup, I used to. Dave Weiner, I used to work for Dave Weiner at Userland, and we would say we make shitty software with bugs.
That's hilarious. That's funny.
Yeah, it is funny, right? But it's a good way to look at the world.
You gotta have a sense of humor,
right? And have some personality to your communication and who you are, because that gets attention in the marketplace.
It does.
Right?
It does.
It's like it catches your eye on Twitter. It's like, what's this BadVR thing, right?
Exactly.
And gets this click, so people check you out, right? And
yes.
Versus something that's sort of bland,
right? Like XR analytics, And the other thing that I'm very passionate about is I love the enterprise space, but enterprise is made of people, right? And I feel like a lot of the tools that are specifically focused for enterprise are intentionally bland, boring, because people think that if they give it any sort of character or personality, that it won't be taken seriously.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that. I believe people are hungry for a tool that is both powerful, useful, and fun and engaging to work with. So if you can provide that and give them even a glimmer of fun and play within their daily workflow and the tools that are presented to them, they eat it up. And it's just people are so scared to take that risk because they're like, oh, but what if people don't take me seriously? I'm like, I'm an absurdist. I think the world is pointless and meaningless and everything's absurd. So take the risk, be fun, be engaging. I really have been so happy to see that people are eating that up.
Well, there's a reason that you're one of the first enterprise companies I've started with because on our new video series because of that, right? Because you stand out and you're pushing a new world that I think is going to be a big world, right?
Thank you. Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I'm glad that we share that same vision. And I think that new world, we all have an option to contribute to that. And I want my contribution to be obviously something that's very valuable to people, very essential to the way that they do work in immersive spaces. But I also want people to be like, that's cool, that's fun, I enjoy work, because we all end up working way more than we should, and we all end up being stuck with tools. And I have been stuck way too many times with tools that are just completely boring. And I'm in flow state. I want to enjoy that flow state. I'm doing something I'm passionate about, but I don't want to have to suffer with the tools. I don't want to see another bland, boring button, whatever. I want something that makes me
What is it about enterprise companies that always do that? Even
every
new
time.
ones. Yeah, it's
every
sort of funny.
time. It's because people are scared, and as much as people want to say oh, I'm an entrepreneur and I'm a risk taker. The reality of it is that people don't want to take risks. They're scared to the way that people perceive them. They're like, oh, well, what if someone thinks I'm not serious? It's their ego that's like, oh, I have to be perceived in a certain way. I mean, my ego left the door when I tattooed my neck and my hands. I'm like, obviously, people are going to perceive however they perceive me, and obviously, I want to be somebody who's respected or whatever. But I am who I am, and I think that being myself is inherently going to bring respect to me without compromise. So I think that the same extends to my product. It is what it is. It's powerful, it's fun, it's cool, it's badass. So that's where the name comes from.
Very cool. I love it. Resist the request to dumb it down or become enterprise. You know, it's I think it'll really help you stand out, and this industry needs more people to stand out. What should we talk about enterprise? Are you having your early days? So
Yes.
I don't know how many customers you have. You're sort of like Infinite Retina. It's the same thing. We're hitting the door, hitting the pavement, trying to find a customer. What's the challenge right now for your business, and how do you think that'll change over the next 24 months when Apple comes in the market and Microsoft with another product and Magic Leap's coming out with a new headset next year and blah, 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 blah. This industry is really going to change in the next 2-3 years. Right?
Oh yeah, for sure. So our biggest challenge right now is really just growing, getting more people. We're looking for a bunch of people to hire, getting that integrated into our company and all of our operations. And then also, once we have those resources, continuing to scale up from our customers. Like right now, there's only so many that we can handle because we're a small team. We have a huge sales pipeline. You know, we're going as fast as we can.
So he's doing his job?
He's doing his job.
Gentlemen in the
Yes.
corner.
Exactly.
A quiet salesman? That's another weird thing.
We are all against stereotypes in any way. Be as interesting as possible. But yeah, I mean, scaling up, pursuing and closing deals and handling more customers, and then continuing to stay close to each one of those customers and using their feedback during this pilot program to adjust the product strategy so that when we do actually release our platform, that all of these data environments are as best suited to the data sets that are used in them as possible. So it's really just the challenges of any small startup, scaling personnel, and then continuing to figure out features and roadmap and refine that as time goes on. So as hardware changes, I think things get a little easier for us because a lot of the features that people want, that we want to give them, become built into the hardware, which makes it easier. And then, of course, when the hardware is less sort of in a prototype mode, so I don't want to say that, like, you know, Magic Leap 1 is a great headset, but it's still sort of like in development. It's still a little buggy. So once that becomes more stable, we are able to deliver better experiences. We're able to, you know, have these deployments that on our end are less nerve-wracking and makes that life easier for us overall. So I think that, you know, you see collaboration, you have, you know, the retinal scans, which is important for us as a data company. People very much want that security, knowing that their data is secure. So all of that stuff makes our life easier. And then, of course, as the hardware gets sort of converges together into the one headset thing, which is, you know, glasses where I think it's going, then that makes it easier for us too with our names. So like, oh, BadVR, but we do AR, do XR, we do MR, whatever. It all just sort of converges together into one thing. Data visualized on that one thing. You know, it's just a little scattered right now, but like you said, it's going to dramatically change in the next couple of years.
Have you figured out how to talk to the press or what shows you're going to go to with booths and stuff like that to try to get customers? Have you? Is that too early yet, or have you figured that out yet?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm still new to the game in terms of like speaking to the press, but we've definitely had a very successful strategy. Honestly, built around Twitter. So being out there and putting myself out there and being my charming self, and with my very strong opinions about tons of different things, has brought in a lot of attention for the company and brought in some amazing leads that just find us. You know, a lot of people approach us about digital marketing and should you do digital campaigns? And to be quite honest with you, those campaigns that we have done don't yield nearly as much as talking to the press, as being myself, getting into, you know, tweet wars with people on Twitter, and just putting myself out there and my opinions draws in a lot of attention. And then in terms of booth, we have a whole plan for conferences, which also have been a main driver of customer acquisition for us. And just getting our name out there, our brand out there. So one of the things which I'm sure that you'll find too with your company is that it's hard to describe what our experiences are in words, right? So like when you're pitching somebody and you're talking to them, if you can't put them in a headset, it's just very hard for them to see the value add.
Yeah.
So that's why I love conferences, is that we're there with demos. We can give people demos versus
And with these new
doing,
standalone headsets, it's getting a lot easier. I mean, you can
Yes.
buy 10 Oculus Quest for $4,000, right?
yeah,
And I could put that on my credit card, and now you can go to CES or South by or Sundance or wherever,
Right.
right? Do you have a list of favorite conferences that you think you're
Yeah.
going to hit in 2020?
definitely. So we had a great time at TechCrunch Disrupt last year.
Yeah.
And then a large sort of industry that we're focusing on is telecom. So, of course, Mobile World Congress, Americas,
Yeah.
not the one in Barcelona, unfortunately, although I love the city of Barcelona. Let's go. And then we're doing Augmented World Expo, of course, which is a big one for us that we did last year as well. And then we're doing IoT World, Startup Elevate up in Santa Clara, and that one is a big one for us in terms of IoT applications. So, out of them, and of course, I have to say LeapCon, because part of the Independent Creator Program grant is to have a booth there and do a whole unveiling and whatever. So, of course, that's on the list, and I had a great time last year.
Yeah, I'd suggest going to CES because at Showstoppers we're going to have a spatial computing area, and Showstoppers has more than 1,000 journalists who come by. It's all for journalists, so it's
Awesome.
an interesting way to launch product and talk to journalists.
Amazing.
Well, we should see what you all are doing and see if I can capture it with this little camera. 'Cause that's always a problem.
We could do. Do you want to set up the Chromecast for that?
Sure.
Yeah. Well, we could do that, or we'll record some and put them and see if I can put them into this video
It
somehow.
might be easier to do that, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Do you
Well,
want
I
to?
remember I gave that Chromecast to the customer came in and
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
so we don't have one at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah, that's cool.
Well, we can send over some videos and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
little clips that you can put into it. It might be a
Yeah.
little easier, also than trying to videotape the TV.
You talking
Yeah.
about the controllers and stuff?
The data experiences and
What's
This
that?
thing.
So tell us about that.
So this started life as a DJ mixer, and then we chopped the bottom half of it off, and we added some circuitry, and we made it visible inside VR, and then we mapped in all these user interface elements onto the controls, and so now this is your data controller. So you can turn on this data level, adjust this knobs, and start to sift through it. You could also point at stuff and then press buttons, and so you end up having this almost like a keyboard equivalent in VR. All the controllers that come out now are you're like holding a mouse, a pointer, a TV remote in your hand. And it's really hard to get precision sometimes. You have to twist your arm and rotate and try to do it, or maybe use these little joysticks. It's almost like you're really limited sometimes with the interface. But with this thing, you have like your keyboard, you have your precision, you can dial in really, really specific variables. And so when you're tuning a data set or working of, hey, add in this layer and now fade this down a little bit and add in this other layer and start to adjust the value up. And so anyway, this is part of our thoughts is I think a lot of this stuff has to do with the interaction and the interface between the person and the VR hardware.
Yeah.
So the controller is really important. So we build our own controllers. We would love to buy them. We would love if other people made them. In the meantime, we'll build them, and we'll go to the music store, and we'll find random-looking things that look cool and chop them apart. And this gentleman here is helping us with making them exist. He's
cool.
a salesman, but he's also a 3D printer.
and that's the
Yeah, so we have our little printer there.
Yeah. There we go.
This
Over
controller.
here. Little spot.
Well, the controller is a really important part of the solution because what we're trying to do is to give you that much faster insight into your data, and if the controller's holding you back, then what's the point?
Yeah.
So we really needed something to allow you to change all of the various dials and knobs and everything in real time, so you could see it in VR in there. And I think it works really well.
Yeah,
That's cool.
it feels natural.
That's awesome.
The other option is like point and then the keyboard. It's like I want to search for this, I want to filter this, which is just like it took so long to type all of that in with a point. It wasn't. So this was the compromise. It was better than a keyboard because the keyboard is, you still have to point and click on stuff.
Yeah.
This just made it super easy.
That's cool.
And it's something you can hand to somebody else if you have 3 people in it.
Right.
And you're playing with it, you're doing it, and you say, okay, I found something cool, but you take a try. And you can literally just hand it to somebody, and then they can start doing it and interacting with the same information. So it's just it makes it a little bit more collaborative too. It makes it a little bit more of a fun experience.
Yeah, definitely.
That's cool.
Awesome.
Well, it's awesome meeting you guys
Yeah,
and seeing BadVR.
yeah, definitely.
And you're doing great work. I like what you're doing. I like where you're going. I think the enterprise is going to be a big deal for the next couple of years. I think, once Apple comes to the market, the consumer market takes off. And I think for the next few years, the money is going to be in enterprise.
Yes.
You're seeing that Microsoft with HoloLens says we're not for consumer, we're just for enterprise, right?
Yeah.
It's $3,500 and it's a big black thing,
Right.
So walking around a factory floor is okay, right? But
Right.
wearing it at a shopping mall, nope.
Not yet.
Not yet.
It's
Yeah.
got to get smaller before that's possible.
And we know we'll get smaller, but we might see some bigger devices as well for a while because bigger lets you do more field of view, more sensors, more stuff, right?
Right.
More compute, and compute's going to be a problem eventually. Maybe not for what you're doing, but for a lot of things.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
So it's all edge compute. Coming from the 5G towers.
Yeah.
All
well,
computing. Yeah.
how soon is this neighborhood going to have 5G? I don't know.
Hopefully.
Actually.
Hopefully pretty soon.
Can't talk about
Hopefully
it.
pretty
Yeah.
soon. So it's supposed to be in this area in Playa Del Rey.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be a 5G thing, I think. I
Yeah,
don't know for sure.
you're pretty
It just
close to it
started rolling
sometime.
out, so
It
it's
just
soon.
started rolling out.
Yeah, but the
Oh,
problem is you
fingers
need to be
crossed.
within 1.5 kilometers of a cell tower. And how many people are within 1.5 kilometers of a cell tower? Not very many, right? Because LTE can be 15 kilometers away, right?
Yep.
And this is a new architecture that AT&T and Verizon have to put down. You have to be within 1.5 kilometers. And also it doesn't go through walls very well. Right. At least the high bit rate stuff doesn't, right? And then what is 5G? AT&T's lying about it on your new
Well, this location would be great for small cells. So if you're
Yeah.
watching AT&T,
Yeah.
come over here and install some 5G for us.
Yeah.
You can use our C-Signal product to
Well,
model out the data.
Actually, that would be
C-Signal.
smart for AT&T to find all the hotbeds of VR, AR, entrepreneurialism, and put a 5G cell tower next to that, right? Because then, as that gets built out, more people will get.
First innovation.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's a ways away. A couple of years, 3 years, 5 years.
It'll be-
Some of my friends think 7 years, right? But it depends how far into rural America you go, right?
This is true.
If you're downtown Chicago, downtown San Francisco, downtown LA, yeah, you're gonna have 5G probably pretty quickly. But the further you go from downtown, the harder it'll be to get it.
Yeah, there's still I think it's something ridiculous. 50% of the country doesn't have, anything more than 3 or 4G.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's still very, very large swaths.
I
of
know. We're
America.
driving home right after this on
You're
Highway
like,
5.
you know then.
Yeah. You can't stream Coachella most of the way, right?
It's so true, though.
You can in LA. It's great, but as soon as you leave the boundaries of population,
And there's still even spots on that 5 where there's no coverage, zero coverage. So it's before we start really biting off 5G in a universal sense, let's get coverage universally and bare minimum edge universally.
But there, to be fair to all the cell companies, there are lots of markets where there is population density. Singapore, China, India, right?
Yes.
There's billions of people around the world who live in high rises in a very dense neighborhood, and they're going to get 5G pretty quickly.
Yes.
Right,
Yes.
because that makes a lot of sense to put 5G in there. And also, I still am wondering, do we see a new architecture? Does Tesla start putting radios into cars? Do we start getting mesh networks? My friends are arguing with me about that. Right?
I personally believe, I remember the last time that we had a conversation, you mentioned that to me. It was I was like, that's genius. I really think that would be, I believe in that.
Park showed me mesh networks on phones 5 years ago, right? That's where the Macintosh was invented and stuff like that. The problem is you didn't need it when your cell packet can go 15 kilometers. Now that it can't go that far, you're going to need, even here, right? You're inside a building. If it doesn't go through walls very well, well, maybe you can hop it around the building a few times, from iPhone to iPhone to iPhone to iPhone. Well, that's only 8 milliseconds of latency right there, right? If it's 2 milliseconds, it's 2 milliseconds latency each hop you have, right?
To the moon and back twice.
Yeah. So that's not a whole lot of I mean, LTE has, I don't know, how many milliseconds of latency? 30 or 50 or 70 milliseconds, right? Sometimes more, right?
Yeah.
So, 2 ain't a big deal if it takes you 8 to get out of a building, right?
Yeah.
Pop, right? And now you could build a little mesh network to bring 5G from outside inside, But I don't know. That's how my mind works. And then my friends are like, no, that'll never work.
That's what friends are for.
We still want the holodeck, right? The holodeck won't work either, but
I still want it.
I still want it. Would you ever leave if you had one?
Would I ever leave like permanent reality?
Would you ever, if there was a holodeck out here, would we ever see you leave?
No, the answer is no.
No, if you turned it off on me, I would be very pissed.
After you, I'd be like, flip that switch back on.
Yeah.
I'd be everywhere all the time, constantly. Oh yes, I would live in it totally, 100%. I wish. We have a green screen room that, sort of technically could maybe be a little bit of a holodeck, but it requires, computers, and then the only thing, I don't get the experience of going. I just look like I go on a camera. It's not enough.
Yeah.
So, I'm working on building the data holodeck. But for everyone else, if somebody is out there, I'm going to speak to the camera, actually building a holodeck, please hit me up. I will give you, I will crowdfund you.
We already sort of have a holodeck. I mean, it's called TV, right?
True.
Coachella is live streaming this weekend. And I've been there. I've been in the front row. It ain't the same, right?
It totally is.
And even if the person in the front row is wearing a Magic Leap and capturing it with a camera like this and in volumetric, it ain't the same. It's never going to be the same.
This is true.
But the gap is going to start going from wide to narrow, right? And that'll be the next 10 years of our lives. After that, all bets are off.
Seriously, I'm just thankful I did.
They're going to jack into our brains.
That's the next stuff. That's the real stuff. So
that's scary.
I love that though. That I want to be able to so one of the biggest things for me that bothers me is it's like this bandwidth problem. All this stuff in my head. It has to go through my fingers. I have to type to get it into the computer, right? Like, what if I could just think it and it would appear and it's just there? Oh my, do you know how much more productive my life would be? That would be amazing. I would love that.
He's envisioning the BadVR that's going to come out of this.
You can do that, and I will sell the tinfoil hats.
Privacy concerns.
Privacy was dead 10 years ago.
Yeah, what is privacy?
What is privacy? Yeah, do you want to get in my head? All right.
Like, you can live there, buyer beware, you're getting what you're getting, but...
It's a bunch of BadVR in my head, I don't know.
Yeah, it's insane.
Well, it's been fun hanging out with you on that note.
Thank you.
Thanks for letting me come and visit with you and talk about the enterprise space. It's a real interesting space. Factories and oil refineries and surgeries and stuff like that, right? But visualizing data is going to be a real key part of this world. So.
Yes, absolutely.
Where do I learn more about BadVR?
www.badvr.com.